Welcome back to another episode of Reflect Live, the podcast where stories come to life and hearts are opened. I'm your host, Michelle. Here in Reflect Live, we offer a platform for people from all walks of life to share their experiences, their triumphs, and their challenges. It's a space where people thrive and connections are made through the power of storytelling. And today we have something truly special in store for you. So grab your favorite beverage, find a cozy spot, and let's dive into another episode of Reflect Live. Get ready to be inspired, moved, and maybe even crack a smile or two. This is Reflect Live with Michelle.
Welcome. You've reached Michelle with Reflect Live podcast, and I have the pleasure to have Linda Henderson with me. She wrote the book, The Road of Love and Hope, and we're going to be discussing that and her journey. Hi, Linda. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, you're very welcome. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to be here and tell my story. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we have such a short time. So can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey that led you to write The Road of Love and Hope?
My daughter was 27 years old, and she was pregnant with her second child when she was killed in a motor vehicle accident. On December 20th, 2011, just before Christmas, she was stopped. Her and her co-worker were stopped in their vehicle, waiting to turn left. She was a passenger in the front seat, and the vehicle was hit by a transport truck driver who was texting and driving. So he was going full speed, hit their stopped vehicle, pushed them into the oncoming traffic where they were hit by another vehicle, T-boned, and the driver, her co-worker, and my daughter Andrea were killed instantly. That was 12 years ago. So that was my black day in life. And every day since then, I have been trying to rebuild my life, reconnect with life. And here I am.
Wow.
You know, my life is always divided with, before Andrea and after Andrea. It's like I had one life and now I have another life. And everything, I'm a new me. I'm a new person. Yes, I have happiness, but it has a different definition. When I smile, the smile is different. Everything is different because I'm a new person. I'm not that person. That person left when she left.
So when you were saying that you're a new person, can you describe what that means?
Well, with grief, it changes everything about you. You encounter so many changes in life, and you have secondary losses. First of all, the changes, you look in the mirror, you don't recognize yourself anymore. You have a different perception of life. You value life. It has a different meaning to you. You realize that you have experienced the worst thing in life. Life and death, we know everybody's going to experience it. But, for me to lose my child, I'm just naked to the world now. So I live with fears. I didn't have fears before. Fears that I have now, like I sleep at nighttime with my phone beside me, just kind of inside anticipating, am I going to get a call? Who else is going to die? What other family member is going to die? I'm changed because I still, to this day, struggle driving and looking at transport trucks. I was halted for about 3 years and couldn't drive.
Hatred toward the driver?
Anger was one of the first ugly faces of grief that surfaced with me. Anger, and it's still there. I have I always describe it like a little flicker, a little spark, and it's there and it lives in me. And changed, I never had that before. So all of the changes that, that's just one of them. I didn't know that anger could be such a rage. I struggled with that. And angry towards him because he didn't have to take any consequences. There was, for the first 3 years, it was 3 years before it was settled. And I believe my grief was on hold then. because I had to, focus on that. I was forced to focus on that. It was on the radio. We're in a smaller town, not a city. So it was a very high profile accident. And, it was all about the texting and driving and hearing his name and, this court date. And it was always on the news. And I focused on that. And of course, then I was diagnosed with complicated grief. Complicated grief is all the outside interferences that happen in life that just kind of sit on top of your grief, and it gets buried. And I don't think I really dealt with it then. I had tears, but for many other things. I also had a court case for my grandson who was left behind, a 2-year-old, and her husband decided that we couldn't see him. So we took him to court. And in Ontario, Canada, there are no grandparent laws. And we were told, you're just going to waste your money. You're not going to win. So we had two court cases on our hands, 2 court cases to deal with in 3 years. And my other biological daughter, her and I just kind of went separate ways. The grief tore us in different directions, and she moved away, and we didn't talk for 6 months. So all of these other outside things affected my grief. And getting back to the trucker, there was some papers that the prosecution had neglected to submit. And because of that error, the judge couldn't find him guilty with what he was charged with. So he walked out the courtroom that day, lit up a cigarette, and carried on with his life.
Oh my goodness.
With a sentence for life of grieving, right? So yeah, the changes, PTSD, there was a time, I can't tell you what time frame, but a year, 2 years, where all I could see in my mind was her in the coffin, and just wanting to feel her face. And my brain was just, traumatized because we were texting all morning. And she had the kind of job where she was working with youth in the community, and she was out that day, and they were collecting money they had got from fundraising. She was teaching these girls life skills, and so they were out and about, and she was texting me, and the text messages stopped, and I didn't hear from her for 6 hours. So I was traumatized with just the sudden way that it happened. I mean, 1 minute she's here and the next minute she's gone. And, she's part of my life, but now she's not part of my life. I mean, she is now, because I carry her everywhere with me. She's in the waves when I watch them, when I feel the waves in the ocean. She's everywhere with me. I've learned over the years, but at that time, it was, something that I didn't even think that I could live through.
Right. Sure. What motivated you to share your experience publicly?
Writing my book, over the years, I, did the yoga, the meditation, the journals. I learned all sorts of things to cope. And one of them was walking. And I would, just take my grief, take my tears, take my package of what I couldn't deal with, and force myself to get out the door. And in the beginning, it might have been a 5-minute walk or a 15-minute walk. And then eventually I go for walks, 45 minutes, and I would go, and that would be my therapy. I would scream, yell, cry, argue with God, talk to Andrea, just release everything that I could, and so that I could breathe. And then I did that for, many years. And then about 9 years in, I came home one day and said to my husband, that's it. I'm going to write a book. I am going to write my story. And if I can help one family, one person that is suffering, that is going through grief like I am, then I will have accomplished my goal.
What did your husband think about that?
Oh, he's my greatest fan. He's like my rock. I nursed for 37 years. I'm 69 years old, telling my age. So only for the reason to say that when I was nursing, electronics and computers were not really, prominent. And they were just kind of coming in, and, we would do our nursing notes, and they were teaching us how to do them. Everything was pen and paper for years and years, and gradually. But so when I came home and told him, I want to write a book, how do I do it? Where do I start? He says, well, you just sit down at your laptop and you pull up Word and I said, how do I pull up Word? How do I get a document? Like, I knew nothing about computers. So he just told me, this is what you do. And you just start writing. And I did, and gradually learned as I went along. If there were some, if I needed help with the computer and navigating through the whole system, he would help me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, everybody grieves differently. How did your husband grieve?
Men grieve differently as well. Men are concerned with being the supporter, right? He was concerned with looking after me and helping me. I mean, he took, I think, a month or so off work, and it was basically to tell me, okay, it's time to eat now. It's time. You need to have a shower because you haven't showered in 3 days. You need to do this. You need to do that, because I was medicated and I was like a robot and couldn't function. So he, helped me. And I believe, and then he went back to work. And I think for him going to work, it was a distraction. And I know that he grieved, but he probably grieved silently, because I was such a wreck that he probably felt if he were to grieve with me or in front of me or cry, that it would make me worse. As time went on, we connected, but for the longest time, I think he was just being the strong one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So with your book, can you tell us a little bit about your book?
I decided to write, I knew nothing. Like I said, I don't even consider myself a writer, right? I said, this is a road that I have been thrown on, and it's unwanted and it's untraveled. And this is the road of grief. So I just decided that I would write the book as if it's like a journey, right? So, the chapters are like the big boulder, which is when it happened. And then, the roadmap, which are tools that you need, counseling, medication with your doctor, support group, connecting with others, to try and feel the support and the loneliness. So I just kind of used the road as that was just I can't even think of the word, the concept that I used for writing the book. And then the road of love and hope. It's my love story. It's my love story. My daughter and I have love and a bond that is eternal and untouched by death, right? Love is, I believe, the most powerful energy in this world. And naturally, because we love so deeply, the grief is going to be equal to that. So yes, grief is hard, but the love and bond, the story does come together to give inspiration and hope, because the love and bond that you have with the person you lost, in my case, my daughter, is my shining beacon. It gives me hope for tomorrow. So the road of love and hope.
That's good. I love that. That's so great. You mentioned God. Were you mad at him at the beginning, or are you still mad at him?
Well, I'm gaining some of my faith back, and it's been 12 years, and I was raised in a home, went to church as a kid, I went to Sunday school, I was immersed in Christianity, and that all blew up in my face, everything that I ever learned. It's like, God is good. How can he be good? Right? Like, I don't see this. So I'm still struggling with that. I think I've, reconnected, and, I'm not, the anger towards God has dissipated, because, I've tried to rationalize it through the years that, we are all given choices, and that trucker chose to text and drive that day and distract himself. And the consequences were that he killed 2 people. But, that is nothing to do with God, So I've tried to regain my faith, because I think to go through something like this, if you don't have faith in something or someone, I'm not sure how you would do it, because you need to have faith in some higher power that you're going to get through this. So
what was the turning point from when you were mad at God, and now you're saying that you have to have faith in something? What was your turning point?
I think my faith was always there, You know, it was, my faith has been from childhood, so it's always been there. And I had to, I think from the very beginning, in my heart, in my mind, in my soul, I had to know that Andrea was in heaven. She was in, she was okay. And so with that thought, then comes along all the rest of it, that, I need help. And sometimes, like I said, I would be, yelling and screaming at God, but I'd be saying, that in the same breath, I would be praying for strength. So I think it was continuous. I really don't know when the turning point was. I just think that I probably relied on my faith and didn't realize it. Well, I know that I did, because like I said, I prayed for strength every day. I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
Right. And, it's only recently, 12 years later, that I've now started to, I've been thinking that I would really like to connect with, my faith again and go to church. And that's been 12 years later.
12 years later. Yeah. Wow. Did you find therapeutic benefits from writing?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't feel it at the time because, day after day, I'd be sitting in front of the laptop with my PJs on. My husband would come home for lunch and I'd still be there, come home at supper and I'd still be there. And he'd say, well, did you have lunch? Well, no, I haven't ate yet. And, he would make supper and I'd say, okay, that's it. I'm gone to bed. So it was pure exhaustion every day, having to dig deep into my emotions so that I could describe what I felt for people to understand. And now that I look at it, I know that it was healing, because the more we tell our story, it is healing. It kind of sends it back home to the brain that this is real, because sometimes I even have those moments where, in those days where I expect the door to open and I just want to hear her voice. Reality is, I know that she's not here, but the more we tell our story, the more we talk about it, I believe that's healing. Writing the book definitely has changed me. I'm on a new journey of self-discovery. It's only recently that I've discovered that my grief was on hold for 3 years. I didn't think about that, but I know now.
But you know now. Yeah, wow. That is so great. The excerpt from your book that you find particularly powerful or meaningful?
The way that I set the book up is that at the beginning of every chapter, I have a quote, and the quote is related to what that chapter is talking about. And at the end of each chapter, I wrote a little self-help text box called Just for Today. And after reading, so I kind of set up people for reading that this quote says this is what we're going to talk about. And now that you've read that, here's some simple guidelines and suggestions for how you can get through what we just talked about. So one of the Just for Today text boxes, and I believe that was in the chapter where I talk about what's around the corner. And, in that first year, what's around the corner is birthdays, Christmas, holidays, the first angelversary, I call it, the date of when you lost your loved one. And so after talking about all that and giving some examples of my stories and how I dealt with those situations, at the end, I wrote, I will permit myself to feel pride for my miraculous gift. It is an honor to be the parent of my child. My survival is a tribute to my child. I will remember that my child and I are forever connected. So those are the sorts of things that are at the end of each chapter. And the very ending of the book, the last one, is called For Today and Always. And it's, again, a scripture. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. 1 Corinthians 13:4-8. So yes, I do believe and I do have faith. But man, I've been mad at God, but I hear that's okay.
It's okay. You're right. It is okay. And I want to talk about this right here because I think it's so neat. Can you share a little bit about this? Spooky Meets a Friend.
That is a book that my daughter wrote in high school in grade 12. And her assignment was to write a children's book. So she wrote Spooky Meets a Friend. And I found it, as mothers, we put all those things away, and every once in a while they just kind of, pop up for us to see. In the first year, it showed its face. And of course, at that time, I looked at it and shed my mountains of tears and put it away. But so since then, I have published it in her honor. And Spooky Meets a Friend is about a little black cat that learns how to share. And it's for children probably from the ages of 2 to 7. And I'm delighted because, she's an author and she's not even here. But before she went into social work and did the job that she was doing, she wanted to be a journalist. And she did write for the local newspaper at the school. Like back in those days, the local paper would have a little write-up from each high school about what was happening in the sports department, what was happening, all the things that were happening. And she was the writer for the high school. So that's Spooky Meets a Friend, available on Amazon as well. Yeah.
And both books are available on Amazon.
Yes, they are. Mine is under my name, but if you type in Spooky Meets a Friend, it comes up as her name, which is Andrea Watkins.
Okay. Perfect. And then, Linda, what is your website?
The website is lindahendersonwrite.com. LindaHendersonWrite.com.
Perfect. That's great. And so they can go on there, and the link to the book is on your website.
Yes, the link to Amazon is all over the website. There is a section there with 3 blogs so far. One of them is Navigating Grief and, just some material to read for anybody who is interested.
Yeah. With someone in your situation or similar to your situation, what advice would you give? Or maybe they don't even know the first steps. Like they just are experiencing this. Like any words of wisdom or advice that you can give them?
Well, I didn't know in the beginning, my life was shattered like glass into a million pieces. So if that person is at that stage, for me, I didn't know what to do, but I can give the advice now that shed those tears. You have to cry. If you want to yell, if you want to scream, if you want to just, you just have to release it. Grief is ugly and grief is hard work. And grief is exhausting, but that work needs to be done. It has to be done in order for you to start to rebuild your life and reconnect with life again. And it starts with small increments, and when you find yourself wanting to have that smile is breaking through whenever that happens, let it happen without guilt, right? But I think one of the most important things that I would say for someone new in this journey is feel the feels, feel everything, and that it's okay and it's normal. Because I thought I was going crazy. I didn't know it was normal. Right? I didn't know.
That's hard to say when you say feel the feels, because it hurts. It's very painful, and it's like you don't want to feel the feels. I can picture people saying, "I don't want to feel the feels because it's awful. I'd rather just shut down."
But
to death or whatever it is, and feel the feels.
It's easier said than done. I know that, as with life, all the advice we give, it's always easier said than done, right? But it is really, really important because you can't hide grief. You can't run from it. You can't run from the effects of grief. It needs to be dealt with. And, if you try to do that, you might be successful. You might be able to hold back those tears, and you may be able to not cry for today or the next day. But when it comes, it's going to come back with a vengeance, right?
You're right.
And then just to know that you're not alone, right? It's a very dark, lonely place to be, but you are not alone. And it is important to try to connect with other people, or anyone that can help you in any way, because it is a very lonely experience.
And when you're talking about connecting, what resources would you recommend?
Well, for me, I got books I wanted to read, and some people may say, well, I can't read, I can't focus, and I couldn't either. I might read 2 lines, I might progress to read a paragraph, but it was there. Books, support groups. For me, Zoom wasn't a real big thing then. I think it's really kind of taken over since COVID. But, I've connected with support groups now that are Zoom. Like last week I was with one and there was 23 people participating. And I'm like, wow, I wish I had this in that year, 2 years when I was needing it. I did have a support group that I went to. So that would be, seek out a support group because you will get the connection. You will be around people who have experienced the same thing. If you don't feel like talking and it's not right for you to talk, you can at least sit there and feel that you're not alone. And then to check in with your family doctor because you're so wrapped up in your emotional status that you forget what's happening physically with your body because grief attacks your body as a whole. So to be connected with your doctor and support group and reading
and media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram,
all that stuff now.
Yeah, all they have to do is just Google it.
And there's all kinds of information online. I think educating yourself about grief, what to expect. That's why I covered some of those things in my book. Like, after the big boulder, that first chapter, it was like, okay, so the obstacles of the road, like, what are they? Depression, anxiety, fear, triggers, all of those things, right? And now I know about all of those things, but when you're going through it, you're not sitting there thinking, oh, like a year after, why am I sitting here crying in the parking lot when I went to the grocery store? Well, it's triggers, right? So education, I think just, letting yourself be educated to know what to expect, right?
And I think it's okay to not be okay. It's just to sit in yourself and just feel yourself and your emotions and your feelings, and it's okay. And what do you think about when people say, well, you should be over it by now? What's your feeling on that?
Now you're talking about my little spark of anger. Yeah, those sorts of things, even now I can't participate in conversations like that. I have to remove myself because I guess that anger is still there. My daughter's gone and you're saying this to me, and that's just not fair. But I mean, I know there is the other flip side of the coin where, sometimes someone will say, well, I know how you feel because I lost whatever, and that they're coming from their personal experience about the worst thing that they have experienced in their life. And they're taking that and they're trying to understand you. But to someone who is working through their grief, that's sometimes you're better off to just keep your mouth closed and just be a listener, and not say those things. I don't react very well to those things. I still get very angry, and I know I shouldn't. Maybe I haven't dealt with it properly. I don't know. I remember one day I was shopping, our neighbor behind us, and this was about a year after losing Andrea, and there was another accident. Horrible accident. The whole family was killed. They were coming home from Disney. The father, the mother, and their child had an accident in the States, and they were all brought home and locally here, right? And they're in the same resting place where Andrea is. So this woman, the neighbor, is a friend of the mother of the girl. And so I met her in the grocery store one day, and she said to me, oh, did you hear about that accident? I said, well, I'm thinking, why wouldn't I? It's all over the news. But yeah, I did. And she, isn't that, we're having the conversation, isn't that awful? And she said, how are you doing? I said, oh, I'm coping. And then she says, well, at least you just have one. Can you imagine losing 3 family members? I almost lost it.
Oh my gosh.
My mouth dropped. And I said, I really have to go now. And I left. Like the anger was, I didn't want to hit her.
Like, don't leave. Something's going to come out of my mouth. Not nice.
Yeah. Like, are you trying to say that I have less grief? Like, that doesn't even make any sense at all. Like, sometimes people just don't even think. So if you don't have it all set out in your mind that you're going to say something and it's going to be helpful, then don't even say anything at all. Yeah. That's what I would say.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. Do you see yourself writing another book?
I do. I have been a grandparent for 26 years, and it has been an amazing journey. So I've actually started, and I have a bit written already, and it will be a book about grandparenting.
Oh, that is so fun.
And that, being a grandparent is another journey all to its own. right?
Yeah, it's totally 100. Yeah.
I think I probably could, after 26 years of experience, I probably could make a book. I could put a book together about my experiences with grandparenting.
Probably could. You probably could.
And especially since they have, of course, been, my source of strength too, through all of this, right? So,
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I do.
I know that we're down at the end of the wire. I always ask my guests to leave with words of wisdom. What would be your words of wisdom for our listeners?
Actually, my new motto has become this. And this is how, people always say, to my husband, Wes, and I, are you guys going away again? Because the end of the month we leave to go to Florida, and then we're taking our RV and going across Canada in July. And then September, we're going to Georgia. And people say, are you guys ever going to stop? And you know what? My thing is embrace the moment. Whatever moment that is, take the time, embrace that moment, because tomorrow, the next hour is not promised. Embrace the moment, cherish the memories, and hope for a better tomorrow.
That's good. Well, thank you, Linda. I appreciate that.
That's what I'm living my life by, those words.
It's beautiful. I love it. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. And it's always, it warms my heart to talk about my daughter. As parents, we brag about our children. And why do I have to stop, talking about her now? Right?
Sure.
I'm not going to stop talking about her and talking about my book. And my book is all about her. So, it's a pleasure to be able to do that. And I've struggled with those words too, like I'm excited or, pleasure. And even now I have to remind myself that don't feel guilty. You're allowed to be excited. You're allowed to have some pleasure in life. And I just, have to remind myself still of that. But it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, I hope that you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for watching and listening to this episode on Reflect Live Podcast.
Next up, Cindy Clark, Saturday, June 15th, 10 to 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Cindy discusses the inspiration behind her book God's Rainbow of Hope, which was conceived during a significant personal loss of losing her mother. Cindy also touches on how music helps with the healing process, to help her navigate the pain of loss and find peace.
Listen on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, or live stream on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram.
Get a sneak peek on upcoming episodes on www.reflectlivepodcast.com.